Alright guys, I don't know why it keeps cutting me off. It's really annoying. But we'll do a part 2 of this video as well. So we'll pick back up. Anytime that blood pressure number is low, not a good sign. If they tell you blood pressure and heart rate are high, everything's good. That is a good sign. That's a good measure. That means that they're on the up. And that's exactly what you want to hear. Okay, so moving forward. Hypertension, typically the result of other diseases, so hypertension comes with other things like other heart diseases, other problems. It is 90 to 95% unknown. So the cause is really unknown for hypertension. It could be stress, could be other things, but it's not really known. Blood pressure increases, training, which strains the heart and blood vessels. So again, the lower you can get your blood pressure, the lower you can get your resting heart rate, the better off you are. Heart failure. So heart failure is a condition in which the heart is unable to pump blood at a sufficient rate or volume, which results in insufficient blood flow to the organs and tissues, which is the fluid buildup. So anytime you hear doctors say that there's fluid buildup, that could lead to heart failure, and you really don't want fluid buildup in your body. Your body has to dispel it somehow, and when there's a lot of fluid buildup, then the body tends to kind of panic. So the lack of blood supply often leads to things like shortness of breath. You can't catch your breath. You're really tired all the time. When your heart has to work harder, then you tend to be tired all the time. And again, fluid buildup, which causes swelling in the ankles or other parts of the body like shins, calves, ankles, wrists, eyes, face, all those things you can generate swelling from. You can also get congestive heart failure. If there's enough fluid buildup around the heart, then it's going to put more pressure on the heart, which can cause congestive heart failure. So cardiovascular risk factors, everyone needs to be aware of these because we're all at risk in some way, shape, or form for any of these things. Genetics, if you have a family history of cardiovascular disease, then you really need to watch your diet and you need to exercise regularly. Age, 70% increased risk over the age of 60. Men are more likely to develop and die from cardiovascular disease than women. And ethnicity-wise, African Americans are at a higher risk for hypertension, and Native Americans and Alaska Natives are at higher risk for a stroke. Alright, prevention of cardiovascular disease, which is really important for today's society, so I really want you guys to take these things into consideration. I hope you utilize them for the rest of your lives. So choose a healthy diet and activity level that works for you, that controls your weight. Weight is a very big part of all of this. So obesity is the #1 cause of a lot of these diseases. It's not the killer. Obesity is not a killer, but it does cause diseases that can kill you. So balanced and moderate diet, eat more fiber, fruits, vegetables, beans, fat-free and low dairy products, and seafood. So eat lean meat, eat things that we've already talked about that are good for you. Limit excess calories, so try not to eat too much. Limit alcohol intake, try not to drink too much. Again, people with excess body fat are more likely to develop CVD, especially later on in life. Avoid tobacco, don't smoke, it's not good for you. Keep alcohol use moderate and avoid drugs. Manage your stress, try and manage your stress the best that you can. Do things that we talked about earlier in the semester, like journal writing, art therapy, exercise, ecotherapy, puppy therapy, play therapy, all of those things, music therapy, all of those things are good tools to utilize whenever you're stressed. Also have regular screening, so get your blood pressure checked, check your cholesterol levels, check for diabetes, go to the doctor. Man, just go to the doctor and get a checkup. It doesn't hurt you to get a checkup. That way you know that you're all good and you can feel better about yourself. You don't have to wonder, like, I wonder if I'm okay today. Or in general, just go get it checked. So you need to make sure that you maintain healthy cholesterol levels. So high density lipoprotein is good cholesterol because it carries excess cholesterol back to the liver so that the body can eliminate it. Low density lipoprotein is the bad cholesterol that you don't want because it tends to deposit cholesterol in artery walls versus going to the liver. And triglycerides are the most common form of fat in foods, and in the body, and they have high blood levels of triglycerides, increase cardiovascular disease. We also need to consider controlling diabetes. Diabetes is a very large part of cardiovascular disease, and it's also a contributing factor. So 2 to 4 times more likely to contract CVD if you have diabetes, 65% from heart disease or stroke, and then over time, elevated blood glucose levels damage nerves and blood cells, which also leads to atherosclerosis, which is what we talked about earlier, buildup of fat and cholesterol. Warning signs of a heart attack or stroke. These are important things, not necessarily for you right now, but maybe for other people around you. So a heart attack, obviously just discomfort in the chest, typically your left side. Discomfort in other areas of the upper body, so your shoulder, your arm, your jaw, your neck. Shortness of breath, that's a big part of that as well. So make sure that you're considering the discomfort to your chest, especially the left side. Stroke typically happens when your face starts to droop, you don't have any strength, arm weakness, and you have speech difficulty. Just for an example, all of this plays a very big part in my life, honestly, and it's going to sound depressing for this lecture video. But just to put it in perspective, my uncle had a stroke about a year or two ago. He actually had a seizure and then passed out on the table. He fell over and passed out, hit his head, blood vessel ruptured in his brain. He had a stroke as well, so his wife was trying to talk to him and he couldn't talk. He had a speech impediment. She had to call 911. They had to airlift him to a hospital in ECU. Lots of big things going on there. So praise the Lord, I want to say he's relatively okay. He didn't have any brain damage from the stroke or the seizure. They did find out that he had a brain tumor, so that was part of his blood vessel rupturing, was the brain tumor. So that was his cause of a stroke, and there can be other things. So naturally the brain's not just going to rupture a blood vessel just because there's something else going on there, like a brain tumor. Okay, so diagnosis and treatment, lifestyle changes, coronary angioplasty, they put a stent and keep the artery open, so they put a nice little stent in the artery to keep blood flow. Coronary bypass surgery, they put in a little pacemaker to keep your heart pumping. Heart valve repair, so they take tissue from other places to repair that, or a heart transplant altogether, which are really hard to achieve. Okay, and then let's segue into a bigger topic which affects me greatly personally, which is why I really like to have these lectures in person, which isn't a big deal. But let's talk about cancer a little bit. So a group of diseases characterized by uncontrolled growth and spread of abnormal cells. So tumors are the mass of cells with no physiological function that arise from the uncontrolled cellular growth, so those little cells grow into a tumor. Now, there are two different types of tumor. You have benign, which is non-cancerous, the tumor just forms because of those cells growing, or a malignant, which is cancerous, and metastasized means that it's gone to the lymph nodes. So we all have cancer cells in our body. We do. Whether we realize it or not, it's just up to those cells or the body to fight off the foreign cancer cells and to not let them grow. So anytime the cancer cells grow, the body stops that. Typically, the immune system stops that. And they say, no, that's bad, and they mark it and they kill it off. Now, sometimes when our immune system is weak, the cancer cells grow because the body cannot control the growth. It could be a slow growth because the body's fighting it off, or it could be a quick growth because the body is not fighting it off. Either way, we do have cancer cells all throughout our body that lay dormant. They don't typically grow. Hopefully, that's always the hope. So 1.66 million are diagnosed each year with cancer, 586,000 deaths per year of cancer, and 1,600 per day of cancer. And again, it's hard to believe, but this is not the #1 killer in the United States. Cardiovascular disease is, but most people think cancer is. So there are multiple different types of cancer. You have carcinoma, sarcoma, lymphoma, leukemia, and the central nervous system. So carcinoma, they are things like the lining or cover of internal organs, glands, or other body structures. So Breast cancer, that's inside the organ, lungs, bladder, all of those things. Then you have sarcoma, which is the connective and supportive tissue that the cancer eats away at, like bone, fat, muscle, blood vessels, tendons, cartilage. So bone marrow cancer, anything like that. Then you have lymphoma, which is they originate the cells in the immune system, so that's attacking your immune system. Leukemia is the blood-forming tissue type of cancer, that's in your bone marrow. And then central nervous system is tissues of the brain or spinal cord. So like my uncle has brain cancer, so that would be central nervous system. Just an example of that. So carcinoma, things like breast, lung, kidney, liver, all of those things that are organ related. Then your sarcoma are the blood vessels, bone, cartilage, all of that fun stuff. It's not fun. I'm sorry. I'm not sure why I said fun. But all of that sort of thing, and then leukemia, bone marrow. The most frequently diagnosed cancer is skin cancer, so melanoma is typically the skin cancer. The leading cause of cancer and deaths is, I want to say it's lung cancer. No, actually, I want to say it's colon cancer. I'm sorry, I've just now forgot what the leading cause of cancer of death is. Okay, so let me look this up, shall I? I'm almost 100% positive it's colon cancer. Okay, so my first statement was correct. It's not colon, it's lung. So lung cancer accounts for more deaths than any other cancer in both men and women. So it is, in fact, lung cancer. And it's lung cancer because the lungs when you put cancerous tissues in the lungs, it's more likely to spread. Because if you think about it, our lungs are in the central capacity of our body, so they're more likely to spread to other things. When you put cancer in the middle, especially with tissue like that, when the lungs send oxygen to other things, then it's more likely to spread that way as well. Alright, so risks of cancer, genetics 5 to 10% are linked to genetic mutations. You can get genetic testing done. I have to do genetic testing because of my family history, so if you have any questions about that, please let me know. 77% in ages 55 or older, you have an increased risk after 55. Half of men, so 50% of men are at risk, 1/3 of women, so women are at a high risk, or a lower risk, sorry. African Americans have highest rate of cancer and exposure to cancer-causing agents, so things like toxins, radiation, all of those things are at risk for cancer. Prevention of cancer, so don't smoke tobacco, have a good diet, physical activity, control your body weight, make sure you manage alcohol, sunlight, avoid tanning lamps, all of those things. Stress, avoid stress. Avoid infectious agents and avoid chemicals. Try to avoid all of those things. All of those things like microwave radiation, Mountain Dew bottles. I'm not a believer in all of that. Again, be a consumer report. Check the research, and if you find it to be believable, then you buy into it. But don't be a consumer just because someone pushes it on you. You need to do your own research, and you need to figure it out for yourself. Early screening saves lives. That's the simple fact of the matter. If you are a girl, go to the gynecologist. They will do pap smears. They will do all kinds of stuff. If you are a guy, go to the doctor and get a checkup. Early screening saves lives. I cannot say that enough. My life is living proof. Honestly, not my life personally, but my family's life of early screening. My grandmother had a mammogram, just a regular checkup mammogram. They spotted something. She had breast cancer. Early screening. My mom had some pain in her abdomen. Her ovary twisted, and it caused a great amount of pain, so they did a screening. She had ovarian cancer. So it's all of these things I preach to you. Preach early screening. Please, Lord, if you think something is wrong, go get it tested. There's nothing wrong with going to the doctor, especially with everything going on today. Just last week, literally, I had abdominal pain. That caused a red flag for me. My mother had ovarian cancer. My grandmother had colon cancer. My grandfather had lung cancer. So that's a red flag for me. I'm not going to sit here and just say, oh, well, that could be just abdominal pain. It's not a big deal. I went and got it tested. I went to my gynecologist. I set up an appointment with a gastro specialist. I'm cleared. There's nothing wrong. I'm cleared, but I wanted to get it checked. So again, early screening saves lives. I can't preach that enough. Some symptoms of cancer. So go with a CAUTION acronym. Changes in bowel or bladder habits. Again, my abdomen hurt. I went to the doctor. A sore that does not heal. Things that don't heal quickly. Unusual bleeding or discharge. Thickening or a lump in the breast or elsewhere. If you feel like there's a lump somewhere, you need to get that checked out. Indigestion or difficulty swallowing. Obvious change in a wart or mole. And nagging cough or hoarseness. So again, this chapter is so real for me, guys. I mean, my grandfather was coughing all the time. He thought he had a cold. One day he coughed up blood. That's a red flag. So coughing or nagging, he went to the doctor. It turned out he had lung cancer. He had a mass in his lung. So again, you think something's wrong, you need to go to the doctor. Do not put it off. Do not. Diagnosis of cancer, so biopsy, imaging, processing, tumor markers, other things. They can't decide if it's cancer until they actually pull it out and they do a tumor marker. Just from personal experience, my mother, they weren't sure if hers was cancerous or not. They were about 90% sure before she went into surgery, but they couldn't tell for sure if it was cancer and if it had spread anywhere else, just by the results. So we had to wait for over 4 hours sitting there in the hospital to figure out if she did have cancer, if it did spread, what we're going to do. Praise the Lord, it didn't spread. They did a biopsy and it was cancer, and we went from there. But that's how they decipher is they have to do a biopsy, they have to take a piece of it and then test it, and then you'll know results from there. So there are 3 different types of treatment for cancer. You can do chemotherapy, which literally kills everything. It's a chemical agent that kills cancer cells, but also kills good cells. So it kills white cells and red cells. And then radiation is high energy rays that kill or damage cancer cells to keep them from growing or spreading. And then you have surgery. So you remove the tumor, you remove the cancer cells, hopefully. So you typically hope that surgery is the first step, and then that you don't have to continue with the other things because they get all the cancer out. But in my experience, they typically want you to do chemo or radiation after surgery just to be precautious. They're going to remove the cancer cells or the tumor, and then they're going to want you to continue on that path to make sure that they kill all of the cancer cells, which was the case with pretty much everyone. So my grandmother had colon cancer and then got breast cancer. She elected to not do chemotherapy with her colon cancer. It came back in the form of breast cancer. She then elected to do chemo and radiation. So she did both of those things. My grandfather, he did chemo after his lung cancer. He got so sick from chemo that they elected to stop after, I think, 3 treatments. He did not do radiation. Unfortunately, his cancer came back in the form of a brain tumor. That's neither here nor there. My uncle he did chemotherapy, and he's continuing to do chemotherapy, and he will probably do chemotherapy for the rest of his life. My mother did chemotherapy. She did not do radiation. She did 4 rounds of chemotherapy, and I pray for each one of you that neither one of you or any of you have to go through any of that, because it's a hard road to go down. Okay, so then last but not least, we're going to talk about diabetes, which is a metabolic disorder, which is characterized by problems with the body's production to produce or use insulin. The pancreas does not produce enough insulin, or the body's cells do not respond appropriately to the insulin that is produced. So hyperglycemia means that you have excessively high glucose levels, which is also known as high blood pressure, or high blood sugar, sorry. Then you have hypoglycemia, which means that you have abnormally low blood sugar problems. Symptoms of hyperglycemia means that you are super thirsty, you pee a lot, you have a lot of headaches, you have blurred vision, weight loss, fatigue, stomach and intestinal problems. You have 3 different types of diabetes. You have type 1, which is little or no insulin secretion, which is an autoimmune disease that occurs when the immune system destroys insulin-producing cells. So you cannot produce insulin on your own. So therefore, you have to have insulin shots. You have to have a pump of some sort to produce insulin. Type 2, which is the most common form of diabetes, which means that you have impaired insulin use by the cells, which in some cases is insufficient production of insulin. Again, you're impaired to use that by cells, and you're impaired to produce it, so you might need a little bit of help. Gestational diabetes is the third cause, or not cause, but type of diabetes, and it's the form of diabetes in which high blood sugar, blood glucose levels occur during pregnancy, so you have to be careful during that. Risk of diabetes over the age of 45, BMI over 25, so if you're overweight and you eat a lot of sugar, not physically active, if you have a family history of it, you need to be careful. High blood pressure or cholesterol levels, blood glucose levels that are higher than normal but not enough for diabetes, you need to be precautious about that. Continued risk, so African Americans, Indians, and Hispanic heritage are at risk. Blood vessel problems, which affect the heart, brain, or legs, are also risks of diabetes. And let's see, treatment of diabetes. So type 1 typically means that you have to have an insulin pump, like I was saying, or you have to have daily insulin shots. And life 2 is typically a lifestyle change. Oral medications are required for that. Alright, and then putting it all together, so all of these chronic diseases are a big factor in life. You need to, the number one, or the top thing that I can tell you from this chapter in lifestyle choices is exercise regularly. Okay, make sure you're being physically active. Don't just sit there on the couch potato. Eat a balanced diet. So I'm not saying eat greens all the time. Don't eat fast food. Don't eat fried food. Eat a balanced diet, okay? Don't smoke, or stop if you do. Smoking is really bad for you. Consume alcohol in moderation. And give your family health history to your healthcare provider. Make sure that you are aware of your family history. For me, I pretty much shared my family history minus a few little other things. Okay, so my family history is very dark. It's very long. There's lots of different things going on there. And I have to be cautious. I'm aware of that. I have to make sure that my diet and my physical activity are on point. And I have to make sure that I'm making good lifestyle decisions for myself and taking care of myself, because I want to live a very long and happy life. So I hope that you guys take that away from this, is that we can prevent all of these things, or at least reduce the risk of all of these things, if we're taking care of ourselves. If we are really putting in the work and taking care of ourselves and doing what we need to do, instead of just saying, well, I'm in my 20s or I'm in my teens and it doesn't matter. It does matter. Start now. Start now. Form the habits that you need to build a good life for yourself. Okay, so with all of that said, there's going to be a quiz for you guys to take, so a 5-question quiz for your participation. Actually, no, I take that back. I have not made it yet, so I really would like to have a discussion about this. So I'm going to make a discussion board and provide a few questions for you, and you need to respond to at least 2 classmates. And your post should be pretty in-depth. I really want them to be thoughtful, and I want you to just kind of share, like, what are your thoughts and experiences about all of these things and chronic diseases, and are there ways for us to further prevent this? Are there things that you're doing that you are aware of to prevent these things? Just give it some thought, and I will have that posted for you guys. Make sure you do that before the end of the day on Tuesday, so that way you get credit for coming to class. And I will see you guys on Thursday. Do not forget about your consumer projects. You have to have something to present on Thursday. That's going to be our whole class period. If you have any questions, please shoot me an email. Otherwise, I'll see you guys on Thursday.